Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Saṅghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Good afternoon, everybody. Now is the time for the Dhamma talk. For this Dhamma talk, our topic is very simple one. The topic is the Buddha, his teachings and Buddhist meditation. It's simple. You know these topics. Let us understand the Buddha, who the Buddha is. Even before that, to understand who the Buddha is, it is better know why the Buddha. We call him the Buddha. Why we call him the Buddha? Because only one Buddha. Just like the sun, the moon. That means, during this time, our era, there's only one Buddha in the whole system of the world. It is not my opinion, it's not my ideas, but the Buddha very clearly said this in the discourses. We always want to go to the very word of the Buddha. There's a particular discourse in the Majjhima Nikaya, middle length sayings of the Buddha. Sutta number 115, Bahu Dhatuka Sutta, many kinds of elements, where the Buddha pointed out different things in the world which are possible and impossible. You know, in the world, everything is not possible. There are certain things which are impossible. That is also to be understood. Sometimes we try to make things possible all the time. But there are certain things. Nature, it is the nature. We cannot go against the nature. There are certain things such as, suppose one says that a stream enterer killed his mother. Stream enterer killed his mother. No, it is impossible. Stream enterer cannot kill his or her mother, cannot kill his or her father. These are quite impossible in the world. Like that, Buddha said, if anyone says that there are two Buddhas at the same time in this world system, Buddha said, it is impossible. Only one Buddha at a time. Only one Buddha at a time. That is why we call the Buddha the Buddha. We call him the Buddha. So let's now understand who the Buddha is. Buddha, in order to understand this, I want to draw your attention to two events of the life of the Buddha, two stories. Hope you like to listen to stories. These are not long stories. So, one story, both these are referring to Brahmins. You know, in the time of the Buddha, there were many Brahmins who, most of them were against the Buddha. As their teaching itself was quite against, they were always against the Buddha. They wanted to find something wrong, some defect, some shortcomings of the Buddha. They sometimes came forward and vehemently criticized the Buddha. They reproached, reprimanded, rebuked the Buddha. That is how they did. So once, this is again according to the discourses. There is a discourse in the Majjhima, again, Majjhima Nikaya, Middle Length Sayings, Sutta number 91. Brahmayu Sutta, the discourse delivered to Brahmayu, the Brahmin. According to this discourse, Brahmayu, this Brahmin, was a very erudite person, very brilliant scholar of the time. He was 120 years old. He had a student named Uttara. Now, one day he came to know the fame of the Buddha. That is, the word spreading all around. Whenever the Buddha visited a place, people start to talk about the Buddha. They talk about the qualities of the Buddha. You know, there are 9 great virtues of the Buddha. They then start to talk about this. This is what happened. One day, he heard of this, heard of the Buddha's qualities. The people talk about this, and they eventually said that now the Buddha is in that particular city nearby. Then this Brahmayu, wanted to send his disciple Uttara to observe the Buddha's qualities, Buddha's characteristics, and understand whether the Buddha is really the Buddha. You know, there are certain characteristics according to the discourses, even according to the Brahmin's history, where there are 32 marks of the Buddha, great man. These are called great man's characteristics, features, different features of the body. 32 marks. So this Brahmin sent his student to observe the Buddha and understand whether the Buddha is really the Buddha. So he went to the Buddha and he observed all these characteristics, all these marks. He understood that he was the Buddha. But still, he is not sure. There are some certain things to observe further, whether he is really the Buddha. So he then started to follow the Buddha. For 7 months, he was behind the Buddha, observing whether the Buddha is doing something wrong. His behavior, the Buddha's behaviors. He went with the Buddha. He followed the Buddha for 7 months. He observed how the Buddha was eating, how he was drinking, how he was sleeping. While he was walking, he observed. While he was talking, he observed. While he was entering a village for alms round, he observed. While he was collecting alms, while he was eating, while he was washing his bowl, begging bowl, all these things. And even he observed how the Buddha come back to the monastery and how he is going to sit, how he is going to teach the Dhamma, giving Dhamma talks. All these were observed by this disciple of Brahmayu. And finally, he came to his teacher and said, he is the real Buddha. He has all these characteristics. And when this was said, he, Brahmayu, this 120 years old person, he rose up his seat and joined his palms towards the Buddha's, the directions where the Buddha was living. He said, Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to him, that sublime one, homage to the sublime one, worthy one, perfectly self-awakened one. He said 3 times. And then further he said, one day I should go and meet him, he said. And then after a couple months, the Buddha visited his village called Mithila. When the Buddha visited his village, then he went to meet the Buddha. When he went to meet the Buddha, he observed these characteristics of the Buddha and he became elated, so delighted seeing this, and he understood. The Buddha said who the Buddha is. This is how we have to understand. Buddha himself said who the Buddha is. Buddha said, Abhinyayang abhinyatang bhave tabbancha bhavitang paha tabbang pahinang me tasma buddhosmi brahmana. This is the Buddha's utterance. Buddha said, Abhinyayang abhinyatang. What is to be comprehended, I comprehended. Brahmins, what is to be comprehended, I comprehended it. Abhinyayang abhinyatang. Bhave tabbancha bhavitang. What is to be developed, I developed it. Bhave tabbancha bhavitang. Paha tabbang pahinang me. What is to be abandoned, I abandoned it. Paha tabbang pahinang me. Tasma buddhosmi brahmana. Brahmana, therefore I am the Buddha. So Buddha is called Buddha because he comprehended, he understood what is to be understood. What is to be understood? Dukkha is to be understood. Unsatisfactoriness is to be understood. Buddha understood this dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, as unsatisfactoriness. Then he developed what is to be developed. What is to be developed? The Noble Eightfold Path is to be developed. He developed it, Noble Eightfold Path. Then what is to be abandoned? The cause of unsatisfactoriness is to be abandoned. That is craving. Since he did all this, Buddha said, it is because of this I am called Buddha. Therefore, Brahmin, I am the Buddha, the Buddha said. That is the first story. The second one, again with the Brahmin. One day, the Buddha was walking along a road, a quite sandy place, and then a Brahmin, he himself was going behind the Buddha. He did not see the Buddha, but he saw the Buddha's footprint. Seeing the Buddha's footprint, as he was expert reading the characteristics of palm and the footprints, palm reader and footprint reader as well. So he saw these footprints of the Buddha, and he saw the 1,000 spokes, wheels in the Buddha's footprints. The wheels, Dhamma chakra, Dhamma wheel, with 1,000 spokes and some other characteristics, some other features in the Buddha's footprint. Seeing this, he thought, oh, this, though like humans, he must not be a human. Then he followed the footprints and he wanted to find the person. The Buddha, after going a little distance, he went to a tree and he sat under a tree, at the foot of a tree. He sat there. And then the Brahmin came to the Buddha and he observed the Buddha and asked, are you a Deva? A deity? Then the Buddha said, no, I am not a Deva. I am not a deity. Then, are you a Gandhabba, the musician of Devas? Then Buddha said, no, I am not a Gandhabba. Then he asked, are you then a Yakka, a devil? Buddha said, no, I am not a devil. Then he asked, then are you a human? Buddha said, no, I am not a human. So all these questions, Buddha said, no. He said then, when I asked whether you are a Deva the deity, you said no. When I asked whether Gandharva musicians, you said. When I asked whether you are a devil, the Yakka, you said no. When I asked whether you are a human, even you say no. Then who are you? The Brahmin asked. Then the Buddha said, Brahmin, all defilements, impurities pertaining to devas, in devas, whatever the impurities, defilements, taints in devas, I have completely eradicated this. I have completely eradicated such defilements, such taints, impurities. Therefore, I am not a deva. And whatever the defilements, whatever the impurities, taints pertaining to Gandharva, the musicians of devas, I have completely eradicated this. Therefore, I am not a Gandharva. Then said, whatever the defilements, whatever the impurities pertaining to Yakka, the devil, I have completely eradicated all these things. Therefore, I am not a Yakka. And finally said, whatever the defilements, impurities in humans, pertaining to humans, I have completely cut off all these things. Therefore, I am not a simple human. So, Buddha then said, I am like a lotus. Buddha gave a simile. I am like a lotus. The Buddha said, suppose the lotus is born in muddy water, whether it is blue lotus, red lotus or white lotus. Lotus is born in muddy water, but it comes out of water, unsmeared with water. Though it is connected to water, it is unsmeared, not soiled with water, not soiled with this muddy water. Just like that, I am, as the lotus, I was born in this society, which is quite impurities. There are impurities in society. Many kinds of beings, people. In this society, I was born in this society, just like the muddy water. Then I came above, just like the lotus. Therefore, Brahmin, I am the Buddha. I am the Buddha, just like the lotus. This is how Buddha himself defined who the Buddha is. Friends, with this we can understand, with these two stories, we can understand that Buddha is not a simple human like you and me. He has completely eradicated defilements, all defilements. No greed, no hatred, no delusion at all. His life is a very pristine, pure, clean life. Crystal clear mind. His mind is the Buddha, not the body. Though mind is affected to body, its body is still human. Though his mind is the Buddha. That is the difference. So he himself was a sansaric being. Sansaric beings like you and me. Before his attainment of enlightenment, he was a sansaric being. Sansaric beings means he was born again and again, die again and again in this samsara. What is samsara? Sansarati means you are wandering. Wandering in these different states, different existences. There are 31 different existences in the world. We are born again and again in these different realms. 31 realms. So when we are born somewhere, we live there and then we die and then we are born somewhere else. That is what is the way. That is the way. That is called birth and death. That is a cycle. This cycle is actually formed with consciousness and physicality and mentality. Consciousness, physicality and mentality, like this. One side is consciousness, the other side is physicality and mentality. What is physicality? Physicality means earth, water, fire, air, these four. Then what is mentality? Mentality means feeling, perception, volitional formation, contact and attention. These five. So together with this, a cycle is formed. That cycle is called sansaric cycle. That sansaric cycle is to be cut off. In order to cut off this, one should understand this Dhamma. Without understanding this Dhamma, nobody can do that. This real Dhamma taught by the Buddha. You know, the Buddhas are rare beings in the world. They are born at a long time. When they are born, they teach us something new, not the same thing. In the time of the Buddha, there were many teachers. There were many different religions, cults, many different philosophies. But Buddha did not teach the same thing. Buddha wanted to teach something new. He taught something new. That is vipassana. That is vipassana meditation. It is through vipassana that one can cut off this sansaric cycle. When we cut off this sansaric cycle, we can attain enlightenment. We can come to the human perfection. That is what the Buddha did. Now let's understand how the Buddha did this. As I said earlier, he was a sansaric being. He was born again and again in different realms. Finally, as he had developed his mind in his previous lives as well, he had meditated, he had developed his faculties, he had developed the qualities, skills. So he was born here in India during our time. 2,600 years ago, he was born. Then, as a prince, he was born mindfully. He was born mindfully, he lived in this society mindfully, and he passed away mindfully. He led a princely life, luxurious life, knowing naught of sorrow, no sorrow at all. It's a princely life. He was given all facilities by his father. He had 3 different palaces for 3 seasons. He had everything. That is why I said, knowing naught of sorrow. No sorrow at all. He led a successful lay life. At the age of 29, he decided to give up everything, abandon everything, renounced everything. He went forth. He became an ascetic. Giving up everything, leaving behind everything, he forth. He went to a woods, forest, and he got a robe, became an ascetic. And thereafter, he went from place to place seeking after teachers. He met different teachers. One teacher, the first teacher, Alara Kalama, he met Alara Kalama and practiced under his guidance. And he developed certain things. He developed certain jhana. And he attained different attainments as well. But eventually he understood that it was not the right thing, not conducive to real goal. Therefore he gave up that and he went forward. Then he met another teacher, Uddaka Ramaputta. Under him also he practiced and he gained another attainment. That itself, these attainments, these are higher attainments. These are immaterial attainments, though they are not the real way to real peace, not conducive to the real goal, complete eradication of defilements. Therefore he gave up that also. Finally, he started to practice severe austerities. Severe austerities. His attainment of enlightenment is not overnight. He did all these things. He practiced both sensual indulgence while he was at home. He practiced sensual indulgence, that is gratification of senses. And now he practiced again self-mortification, self-torturing, sort of torturing himself for 6 years. But no results. Eventually he became almost a skeleton. Now, one day he thought that this should not be the right path. This should not be the right path. Therefore, he contemplated upon his own life. When he was around age 5, he practiced. One day he practiced meditation, and that day he developed first jhana. And with that experience, he thought that that should be the way. With that, he started to practice. And finally, it was prior full moon day of May, Vesak, before the full moon day of Vesak, he came to a tree which was shady tree, huge tree. That is what we respect, what we call Bodhi tree, under which, when it was evening, he started to practice. What is the meditation he practiced? Anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing. He started to practice mindfulness of breathing. While he was practicing, his mind was well concentrated, well developed, purified mind. As the mind was purified, is clear, is malleable, is wieldy mind, he directed his mind to understand his previous lives. He understood how he was born in his previous lives. Many thousands, millions, trillions, eons of lives, how he lived in the past. And then when it was midnight, he gained another knowledge. That was the first knowledge he gained, the ability to understand his previous lives. Now, in the middle of the night, he gained another knowledge, which is called ability to understand how beings are born to this world and how beings pass and are born somewhere else. That itself is a knowledge. That is the second knowledge he gained. Then when it was dawn, he gained another knowledge, which is called complete eradication of defilement. That is a peculiar, that is a special, that is unique in this teaching of the Buddha. So he understood this Dhamma. He understood the way to cut off all defilements. With this, he became our Buddha. He became the Buddha of our era, our time. So why he is called Buddha? Bud means wisdom. Buddhi, Buddha. Bud is your wisdom. You bloom the flower of wisdom. He bloomed the flower of wisdom. That is why Buddha is called Buddha. He is not only called Buddha. Normally we call him Samma Sambuddha. What is Samma Sambuddha? Self-awakened one. Rightly self-awakened one. Or perfectly self-awakened one. That is how we call him. He realized the Four Noble Truths perfectly, rightly, correctly. He realized the Four Noble Truths. That is the important thing. That realization is not something given, it is a realization. It is not something to receive, to gain from somebody else, not from outside agent. It is unaidedly. Buddha's enlightenment is unaidedly. Nobody helped him to gain this knowledge, Buddhahood. Nobody helped. That is why, friends, the Buddha is called Samma Sambuddha, self-awakened one. It was an awakening. He was awakened from the deep slumber of ignorance. As we all are humans, we are samsaric beings. The most difficult problem in us is ignorance. It's like a huge mountain, ignorance. It's in front of us. We cannot see the other side. We cannot see things as they are. The Buddha understood this darkness of ignorance. He then dispelled the darkness of ignorance. He himself did this. That is why Buddha is called Samma Sambuddha, rightly, perfectly self-awakened one. Buddha has qualities, virtues which are immeasurable, unfathomable, but Buddha himself condensed them into 9 great virtues. Let's understand a little bit about these great virtues. Buddha, when we recite the stanzas every day, morning and evening, here we recite, but not during the retreat. We recite the stanzas. Where we recite the stanza, Itepe so bhagava arahang samma sambuddho vidyacharana sampanno sugatto lokavidu anuttara purisa dhamma sarati sattha deva manusana buddho bhagava. Those are the 9 great virtues. Let me to explain in English. Araha. The first quality is Araha. Buddha is called Araha. Araha means Buddha is the worthy one. Worthy for what? Worthy to our veneration. Worthy to receive our gift, whatever. Buddha is worthy of receiving. Worthy of receiving anything from us. As we respect the Buddha, we offer certain things. He is worthy to receive these things. Therefore, Buddha is called Araha. And he broke the hub of the samsaric wheel. You know, samsaric wheel has a hub to which all these spokes are hooked. Once the hub is broken, no place to hook the spokes. He broke the hub of the samsaric wheel. Therefore, Buddha is called Araha. Ara means the hub of the wheel. And also the Buddha has never done wrong thing, evil deeds, even in secret. Secret is called Ara. The Buddha has destroyed it. Buddha has never done wrong deeds, evil deeds, even in secret. Therefore, Buddha is called Araha. That is the first quality. Then the second one, Samma Sambuddha, perfectly self-awakened one. He realized the Four Noble Truths through his own mind. He himself realized this. Therefore, he is called Samma Sambuddha. You know that. Already I have explained it. Samma Sambuddha. Vijja Charana Sampanna. The third one is Vijja Charana Sampanna. Vijja means knowledge. He had different types of knowledge, such as ability to read his previous life, ability to read others' mind, ability to understand any sounds, humans or animals, or devas. He had that power to understand sounds near, far, whatever sounds. And he had knowledge to understand how beings are born to this world and how beings are born in other realms, other world. All these are different types of knowledge that he had. So that he then led his life accordingly. Therefore he is called Vijja Charana Sampanna. Then the next quality is Sugata. Sugata means well gone. He is called well gone one, because he realized the path, he discovered the path. That is the Noble Eightfold Path, the middle path. He trod the path, trod on the path nicely, well gone on the path. To where? To the attainment of enlightenment. Therefore he is called Sugata. Then the next quality is Loka Vidu. Loka means world, world systems. Vidu is knower. So he was the knower of the world. He knew the different systems of the world. There are 1,000 systems of the world. 1,000 system, twice 1,000 system, thrice 1,000 system of the world. Buddha realized these different world systems. Loka Vidu. Then Anuttara Purisa Dhamma Sarati. He was the supreme trainer of persons to be tamed. Some persons, even in the time of the Buddha, there were some rough, tough persons, such as the person with finger garlands. You might have heard of this. And different persons, like debaters. Different debaters came to the Buddha. Different persons came to Buddha and criticized him. And he tamed them with his kind word, with his compassionate word, with metta, loving friendliness. Therefore he is called supreme trainer of persons to be tamed. Then he was the teacher, Sattha Deva Manusana. He was the teacher of gods and humans, not only humans. Gods and humans, deities and humans, they both came to the Buddha and learned the Dhamma. Then Buddha, he bloomed the flower of wisdom. Bhagava, the Blessed One. These are the qualities of the Buddha. So friends, with these qualities, Buddha became the Buddha. Buddha is not a god, not a savior, not a messenger. He was a human. Though human, he was a superhuman. extraordinary human. That is the difference. A supreme person. You know, the Buddha was the seventh person, seventh human, attained enlightenment during the last 91 eons. For the last 91 eons. It's quite incalculable time. For the last 91 eons, only 7 people, 7 humans attained enlightenment, full enlightenment. So he was the 7th one. That is the wonder. So, in this manner, he became the Buddha of our era. This is how we have to understand who the Buddha is. Now let's understand what his Dhamma is, teachings. His teachings is again numerous. He had delivered thousands of discourses. If we say, now we have 3 different baskets. Today we talk about 3 different baskets. If you say that this is what the Buddha said, 3 baskets, it's quite difficult to understand. Quite difficult to believe even. Buddha has taught the real Dhamma. His real Dhamma, he has condensed his Dhamma into 37 factors. 37 factors. What are the 37 factors? Buddha said, 4 establishments of mindfulness, 4 right efforts, 4 roads to power, then 5 spiritual faculties, 5 mental powers, 7 factors of enlightenment, and noble eightfold path. Even these 37 are quite difficult to remember, isn't it? So we can condense this 37 into 3. That is the triangle. That is the Dhamma triangle. These 3 are, on the very top is the 4 noble truths. Then this side, this corner, dependent origination. DO stands for dependent origination. And the right side, the triangle, small triangles, is the 3 characteristics of existence. Whole teaching can be condensed into these 3 principles. Now today, there are 3 different sects, 3 different schools in Buddhism. They are Theravada, Mahayana and Vajrayana. These are the 3 main schools or sects. Now all these sects, all these Buddhist schools, they all accept these 3 principles. So when we want to understand the Dhamma, we have to understand these 3. If we understand these 3, we know the Dhamma, we know the teaching of the Buddha. In order to understand this teaching, we have to practice. What is to be practiced? It is the nucleus of the triangle. The dot, we have to start from the dot. That is what is called sati, mindfulness. When we practice mindfulness, there are fourfold mindfulness, 4 establishments of mindfulness. That is why it is here as a square. The square means the four-sided, 4 establishments of mindfulness. Friends, this is how we have to understand the Dhamma. If we practice mindfulness, we can develop 4 establishments of mindfulness. When we develop 4 establishments of mindfulness, we can develop 7 factors of enlightenment. If we develop 7 factors of enlightenment, we can understand right knowledge and right liberation. This is the way to understand Dhamma. So in order to understand this Dhamma, we have to read some discourses of the Buddha, original discourses of the Buddha. There are at least 7 discourses. I can mention the names of the discourses if you like. You have to read the first discourse of the Buddha, then the second discourse, then the third discourse, in order. And then you have to understand the 4 establishments of mindfulness discourse. Then the mindfulness of breathing discourse, anapanasati. And then the elements, different elements, dhatu, analysis of elements, dhatu, vibhanga. And then chakra, the 6 sets of 6. These are different discourses to be understood. You have to read this. In order to understand the Dhamma, real teaching of the Buddha, we have to study these discourses. Otherwise, simply, if we read this book, that book, not work. It's not enough. We have to go to the original discourses. So that is how we have to understand the teaching of the Buddha. Now let's come to the last part of the topic. Meditation. Buddhist meditation. There are many different meditations. All these meditations can be condensed into one side, which is called samatha, concentration meditation. All other meditations can be condensed into this one thing, which is concentration meditation. Buddha taught something different. As I said earlier, he taught something different. What is that? That is vipassana. So, samatha and vipassana. Concentration meditation and insight meditation. But when practiced, both these should come together. Without practicing samatha, we cannot practice vipassana. We have to practice samatha, concentration, at least for couple of days. Then only we can switch to insight. When practice samatha, concentration meditation, there are different methods, different objects for meditation, such as reflection of the qualities of the Buddha, like as I said earlier, the 9 great virtues of the Buddha. You have to recollect these qualities of the Buddha. That is what is called Buddhanussati. Then you can recollect the qualities of the Dhamma and also the Sangha. Or you can practice metta, loving friendliness. Or you can practice mindfulness of death. Or you can practice repulsiveness of the body, the 32 parts of the body. Those are called concentration meditation. So when we practice this as concentration meditation, we can switch to insight. And also anapanasati, what we are practicing now, mindfulness of breathing. So basically, we have to practice at least for some time, we have to practice this meditation called samatha meditation, concentration meditation, where we let the mind to come to the state of tranquility. Then we can understand reality. What is reality? Vipassana. Vipassana means you see true. When the mind is concentrated, very well concentrated, you can see things as they are. The Buddha said, monks, develop concentration. Concentrated monk, concentrated practitioner, sees things as they are. What can you see as they are? Not outside. First of all, you can see your own nature. You can see the arising nature of your form and the cessation nature. Arising nature of your feeling, the cessation of the nature of cessation. Arising nature of your perception, cessation nature. Arising nature of your volitional formation and the cessation nature. Arising nature of your consciousness and the cessation nature. Friends, this is how we practice. When we practice in this manner, we can understand this Dhamma. We can understand this Dhamma within ourselves, exactly like what the Buddha did. Buddha realized this Dhamma and revealed this Dhamma. So it is our duty to understand this Dhamma and practice this Dhamma so that we can understand, we can realize this real Dhamma. So this is why the Buddha taught us this technique. This technique of meditation is called tandem, samatha vipassana tandem. Concentration and insight meditation. For which, in order to introduce this technique, Buddha taught us a technique, a different special discourse. That discourse is to be understood, that discourse is to be studied thoroughly by all practitioners. Each and everybody should understand, should read and understand this discourse if you want to practice properly. That discourse is the establishments of mindfulness. Satipatthana. Satipatthana Sutta. So as beginners, I recommend you to read this discourse. There are sources now. There are many different sources. If you browse internet, if you go to the website like accesstoinsight.org or suttacentral.net, you can read these original teachings of the Buddha. When you read this, you can understand this properly. Then you know better what you are doing, what you are practicing. In such a way, you can develop your meditation. You can live happily, peacefully in this society. This is why we have to practice. So the Buddha, in this particular discourse, Buddha gave the technique. Whereas the preamble of the discourse, Buddha said, monks, there is only one way. This is the only direct way. This is the only direct way for what? For 5 reasons. For the purifications of beings, for the overcoming of sorrow and lamentation, for the disappearance of pain and grief, for the entering of the path, and for the attainment of enlightenment. Friends, this is why we have to meditate. As I said yesterday, I told about 4 reasons why should we meditate. But Buddha is always above. Buddha gave 5 reasons for meditation. This technique is to be practiced for these 5 reasons. For the purification of our mind. Secondly, for overcoming of sorrow and lamentation. Third, for the disappearance of pain and grief. Fourth, for the entering of the path. And the fifth, for the attainment of enlightenment. If we understand this sutta, this Dhamma, very teaching of the Buddha, and if we practice this accordingly, Buddha said, you can attain enlightenment within 7 days. First he said 7 years, but later on Buddha said, forget about 7 years. You can do this within 6 years. Then said, forget about 6 years. You can even do within 5 years. then 4 years, 3 years, 2 years, within 1 year. Then Buddha said, forget about 1 year. You can do this within 6 months, 5 months, 4 months, 3 months, 2 months, 1 month. Finally said, within 7 days. Even within 7 days, you can attain enlightenment. You can become an arahant, enlightened one. If any residue remains, any defilement remains, even you can attain, you can become a non-returner. Anagami, the state called Anagami, after which you will be born in a particular abode, which is called pure abodes, where you can complete your samsaric journey. You don't want to return here. So, friends, this is how we have to understand this wonderful Dhamma. Let's all start to read the original teachings of the Buddha. If you really want to practice this Dhamma, let's read the Dhamma, original teachings of the Buddha, and practice accordingly, so that we can live happily, peacefully in this society. And finally, one day, we ourselves can realize real peace, real happiness of Nibbana. May we all attain supreme bliss, the real bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.